Welcome back into the Skol Purple podcast. It's Carson and David bringing you more great off-season content here on the Skol Purple podcast YouTube channel. David, let's go ahead and get right into it here. Obviously, people probably clicked on this video thinking, all right, Steve Wilks, let's bring him in as the new defensive coordinator. And we're obviously going to talk about this a little bit on our NFL show too, but I think Steve Wilks got stiffed big time by Carolina. He should have been hired as the head coach. And, as you said before we just started this, he got stiffed by a guy that got fired for Jeff Saturday, basically. So,
Yeah.
and we've seen how that's worked out for the Colts. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the situation as a whole before we get into him as a defensive coordinator for the Vikings. Just talk about it from your perspective, and do you feel like race plays a part in this?
I think race does play a part in it, but I think the major issue is the side of the ball that he coaches. And what we're seeing right now with all these new hires in the NFL is you want offensive minds to develop quarterbacks. So you don't want a defensive coordinator developing your quarterback. Look at how hard Brandon Staley is doing over there in, I'm about to say San Diego, in Los Angeles,
Right.
So I think that plays its part because we know personally, like with Zimmer, for example, Zimmer had a hard time developing quarterbacks. And every time the quarterback actually did good and the season did good, the offensive coordinator leaves. And here comes another new coordinator, new scheme, and everything like that. So that's what I really think the problem is. Steve Wilks got shifted twice because the Arizona job was really, I couldn't believe they fired him after 1 year just to bring in Kingsbury, and I never
that went well
understood
too.
that. Yeah, that went well too. They didn't succeed in any. They probably made the playoffs once or twice, but that's about it. I just think it really boils down to teams they want to hire a young offensive mind that's going to develop a quarterback and be there for a long time versus you hire a defensive mind. The defense might be good, but you're going to have a harder time developing a quarterback. And if you do develop a quarterback and your team starts to succeed, that quarterback is going to be in multiple systems going along.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I think that is true. I'll just say this. If you're looking to develop a quarterback, what makes you think Frank Reich is the right guy to hire? Like
Exactly.
That's my thing. Like, he was wrong about some of the quarterbacks they brought into Indianapolis, and we just think he's an NFL offensive genius. Like, I'm not so sold on that, and I think Carolina could suffer the consequences of hiring Frank Reich, even though there's some history there. He took the first snap as a Carolina Panther in the franchise's history. But Come on, do you want the right coach or do you want the storyline?
Nostalgia doesn't help you win games. No one cares.
Yeah,
it's how you prepare your team to go out there and play on Sunday. And the guy just got fired in like week 5 this season, something like that.
Middle of the season,
the coach, and you're already bringing him right back in there for another head coaching job. Like, maybe the guy shouldn't have stayed away from coaching for a year before he got another job or went to a coordinator job. But just to give the guy another head coaching job, he's only been away from the game for 5 minutes, and you stiff Wilks again. It puts a bad taste in my mouth. It just, just screams Miami.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about Steve Wilks as the Vikings' new defensive coordinator. Obviously, the Vikings have conducted several interviews. I believe Brian Flores, the latest to interview on Thursday night. So let's talk about Steve Wilks. I think he's a really good defensive mind. I mean, you saw what he did with that Carolina defense the second half of the season, and I think he could do some wonders with this Vikings defense. Obviously, there's got to be some turnover. There's got to be some changes there. But I think Steve Wilks coming in here as the new defensive coordinator, obviously Flores, I think, would be a good fit. And some of the other guys, Sean Desai. But I really like the idea of Steve Wilks coming in here.
Me too. And I like the idea that he has a specialty in defensive backs. So, and that's kind of what the Vikings need right now is to get those corners together to develop these young corners. And I think him coming in, being available now, he should be at the top of the list. Even though he's going to be a head coach candidate in the future, I still would take a fly on Wilks because this is something that the Vikings defense need going forward. They need a tough, non-nonsense guy on defense. It's okay to be finesse on offense, but you need to make sure when you play a team knows, hey, they're going to Minnesota, it's going to be a tough game on defense. It's not this 12 yards, 12 yards over a receiver. So I don't think he's going to come in there with that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I think Steve Wilks, I didn't get to look at any of his defensive performances, like in terms of how his defenses did, but I would dare to say he's had some pretty good defenses through his career, and just like I said, based on what he did with Carolina the second half, I think it's worth at least at the very minimum an interview or two to talk to him about coming over here.
Yeah, I agree. He checks all the boxes.
Yeah. And like you said, defensive backs, one of the biggest question marks for the Vikings going forward. Can he come in and develop some of those guys? Now, we also had a guy that was supposed to be good at developing corners and defensive backs in recently, and Ed Donatel, but I thought
she was talking about Mike Zimmer.
Has a better. Oh, well, that too. Let's bring in a third guy. Why not? Third time's the charm, right?
Yeah, but I think that's the thing when it comes to hiring defensive coordinator. I think Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, they should hire 3 guys for one position. And why I'm saying hire 3 guys for one position is you hire the defensive coordinator, which would be Steve Wilks or Flores, whoever you want to, you decide to pick. You hire their heir apparent, their apprentice, for if they decide to leave. And that way your defense scheme can stay the same. And then you hire a person like Monty Kiffin or whatever, a defensive, special assistant, just to oversee everything. That way you can solidify your defense for years to come. That's what I think the Vikings should be thinking. Because if you think about what the Eagles did this year, they took Fangio off the board from everybody. People don't understand that Fangio is a special assistant to the Eagles right now. And look at their defense. Everybody's out here trying to run the Fangio defense, but they never hired Fangio as a special assistant outside of the Eagles. So I'm not surprised that the Eagles defense is that good. That's what you got to do. You got to be creative, in those positions.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's going to do it on our talk about Steve Wilks coming over to the Vikings. As always, we'd appreciate it if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel here, Skol Purple Podcast on YouTube. Find us on social media at Skol Purple Pod, and we'll catch you in the next one. As always, Skol.